Hello, and welcome to the the first module that we're actually going to be looking at. This video is going to count as the lecture that I would give if we were in class. I would like to make the note that if we were in class, I would not be just standing up in front of you talking to you. This would be an interactive and engaging for our entire class period. However, it's kind of hard to engage a screen with no faces. So I will do my best. Let's see. So a couple notes before I get started. Number one, I didn't mention it before, but it's really important to have a writer's notebook. This is going to be like an actual physical copy. This is mine with my my kids gave me some stickers. So I have Harry Potter and Kurt Cobain, and it's super fun. But anyway, this is where I keep my writing. This is the best practice of what we would want our students to do as well. And I'll share with you as we go that I also keep one. Every year I start a new one with my 8th graders, and I write right alongside of them. And there are things that we're going to do in here that I'll be writing alongside of you as well to model the best practice strategies and tools that we can use in the classroom. So it's really important, for instance, that you have a place. Obviously, I'm not going to collect them. If we were in class, I would give you like a writing prompt, and we would take a few minutes to write, and then we would share and discuss. Can't really do that here, but I will tell you where I would do those kind of things. And those are also the kind of things that you could do with your own students, depending on age or grade. So find yourself a notebook. It doesn't have to be like its own separate thing. I always have one that's my own separate thing, but that's because I'm a writer, and I think of myself as a writer. So I'm hoping that with your writer's notebooks, you all will start thinking of yourselves as writers for this semester, and not just I want to be a teacher people. So we're going to be writers. A few more things. I didn't mention this, but after thinking about it, I thought I should. If you are not on social media or Twitter, or even if you are, I suggest that you follow educators and follow those in education and people who are in academia, who are studying things like teacher education and methods and things. I put my Twitter account right here at @KSlider. I don't just tweet about education, but that's mostly what I tweet about. And Instagram is also a really good place to find authors and educators. I should say, just by being on social media and interacting, I've been able to find free webcasts and things to be able to do over the summer. And I've been able to interact with authors that my students love and tweet with them and show them some of the things that my students are doing and writing about. And they interact back most of the time. And one cool thing was Sherritt Lerner, who wrote the Engine Nerds series, which, by the way, is a great series for like 4th through 6th graders. He had sent out a tweet that said, I really want to support some educators and send books to some teachers, send me your class wish list. And I keep an Amazon class wish list going for my classroom library. And so I sent it to him, and he sent me probably 30 books. It was amazing. So exciting. So it's very important. That's also how I found Penny Kittle and her Book Love grant, which I won and was able to get $500 worth of books into my classroom library. So social media is really the place to go. Check out who I follow if you do follow me. And then I suggest following anyone that you see on there that's an educator or somehow involved in reading or writing. And then I have 2 Instagram accounts. @KSlider is my personal one, but I share a lot about education and things that I'm doing with my students on that one. And then @Mrs.Slider is the one that I give to my 8th graders and their parents. if they want to follow along and see some things that we're doing in class, or sometimes I'll put updates and things on there for them to respond to. So those are my two that you can follow. And again, I don't really follow many people on my Mrs. Slider one because it's really just for me to show my students things, and I definitely do not follow students back. In fact, if I see that a student follows me, which it's almost all students, and their account is not private, I will tell them that they should have a private account because they are 8th graders. And I definitely do not follow them back. Okay, so articles of the week tips. This is the other thing that I wanted to talk about before I get started in the module lesson. The article of the week, I see it that quite a few people are signing up. Nobody has been brave enough to sign up for this week, which is going to become a problem, because if you wait till the last minute and you didn't sign up and the date passes, I don't know when you're going to do it and get your credit. So you're going to want to make sure you sign up. It's pretty simple to find, although I'm not sure everyone's super familiar with the university libraries, and I've been using them for so long that I guess I kind of, assume maybe too much. So in order to find an article of the week, I said start with something that you're wondering or a topic that is interesting to you. And you can browse journals if you go to the university libraries, which is linked on your Go WMU. You go to browse journals, and then you go to, and then this will pop up here, and it will show here where you can start typing in the journal name. I would explore these journals. The elementary school journal is obviously elementary age, as is elementary English and language arts and reading teacher. Voices from the Middle is more middle school, and then English journal is going to just be secondary. So it will be 712. So if you're interested in middle school at all, you could also search English journal. So those are some journals to explore that I have used. I've written for a few of these. There's also the Language Arts Journal of Michigan that I don't have here. That's also going to be 712, the Language Arts Journal of Michigan. And I've written for a couple of these, and I blind review for a few of these as well. So I know that they're good sources for you. So get signed up, go into the sign up thing and make sure. I think only about half of you so far signed up. And honestly, if you have any questions or you're not understanding or you're looking for something and you're just not finding it, Kate Lanigan is the go-to person at the library. She has helped me with numerous research projects for years now. So she is fantastic. I've linked here to her email, but it's also on the library website. I will put a copy of this PowerPoint in our module so that you can click links. Okay, so this is where I would, if we were in class together, I would say, everybody open your writer's notebooks and tell me what you think best practice means. What does that even mean? They throw those terms, they're kind of buzzwords for in the education world. Best practice, is that best practice? Well, I don't know. Is he doing best practice? Oh, that is not best practice. So you'll hear this like forever. And in interviews, even, you might be asked about best practice in writing or best practice in reading or best practice in math instruction. So it's good to kind of have an idea of what that even means. So the question come up, does it come from the professional writers? Is that where we find best practice from? What professional writers do, or the wisdom of teachers, or the scientific study of writing interventions? And to tell you the truth, it kind of comes from all of those things. I will say that there is not as much quantitative research as there is qualitative research in the area of writing instruction and what qualifies as best practice writing instruction, which is basically means that we have a lot of testimony from professional writers what they do and what works for them, and what works for them might be what sells. And teachers can give us, testimonials of, well, this worked for my students, but it's hard to know if that will work for another set of students. So then we also have the scientific study of writing interventions, which is the study of testing the effectiveness of different writing practices. So you really have to take all of those things together to determine best practice. Okay, let's see. I have to keep moving my face out of your way so you can see my fun slides. All right, so you want to create a classroom that supports writing development. That's what best practice is. What does this look like? It looks like a teacher who's enthusiastic and joyful about writing. So even for some of you who might be sitting there going, I hate writing. Once you have to teach it, you need to find some enthusiasm and joy, because if you don't, your students are also not going to. And I will tell you that it is proven that students and actually people, but in our world, students with anxiety, the number one avoided task is writing. I was kind of surprised at that, because as someone with anxiety myself, I avoided math. But it's proven that the number one avoided task, things kids will try to get out of doing it by going to the bathroom, by sharpening their pencil a million times, all the way up to just leaving the classroom during writing, because they just don't want to do it. And so if they don't have a teacher who is enthusiastic and joyful about it, they have no reason to try to find enthusiasm or joy either. So moving on, a classroom where students work and where their work and their writing is visible. I know one of the teachers in my hallway likes to, on the closet in she calls that the classroom refrigerator, and that's where she hangs up good writing. We have a bulletin board in our 8th grade hallway where we display some of our narrative writing every year, and I'll be sharing that with you when we get to narrative writing. But it's important to put student work around so that students can see that what they do is valuable. A positive environment that encourages them focusing on trying hard and learning new strategies, setting high but achievable expectations and encouraging students to surpass previous efforts and success, using scaffolds to help students make progress and then slowly removing those scaffolds. We will be talking about that also when we talk about building our classroom writing workshop, and with each different kind of writing, what kinds of scaffolds do we have to put around it so that students can access it, and then how do we take those scaffolding down so that they're doing it independently. The adaptation of assignments to fit the needs and interests of students. This might look like differentiation. This might look like accommodation. This might look like just giving students choice. So we'll be looking at those things as well, giving choices and experiences to students. I hate how this little thing is down here. But the bottom one says having a classroom that encourages student talk. When I was a kid, it was you wanted quiet classrooms, and we sat in rows, and the goal was that if the principal walked in, everybody was either silently reading, silently writing, silently working on math, silently doing whatever. Those days are gone, and we want to look for classroom talk, student talk, that is about what they're doing. All right, so good writing teachers, which is what we all want to be. Good writing teachers give students the chance to write for authentic audiences. That goes along with displaying their work, but it also goes along with finding things where they're writing for people to know their work. So narrative writing is one thing, but what kinds of informational writing or which kind of argumentative writing can be for someone to actually read that's not the teacher. Encourage personal responsibility and ownership of writing. Promote a high promotes high levels of student interactions, creates a pleasant and positive writing environment, and encourages self-reflection and evaluation. These are all things that we're going to get into with other modules, but these are all best practice things. But most importantly, writers have to write regularly and write for various lengths of time to build stamina. One of the things I think that gets lost in the ELA classroom, especially at the secondary level, when we only have some middle schools will split it and they'll have a reading and a writing class, but most places it's all crunched together as English language arts. And we have to do all of the standards for reading and writing in that one class. And I think sometimes the writing gets lost. We just want to do quick things. All right, we'll do a writing assignment at the end, but we need kids to be writing regularly, every day, every single day. I love it when we get a couple weeks into the semester and a student will be like, Miss, I don't have a pencil. And another kid will be like, what? How do you not bring a pencil to this class? We write every day. I love it when the kids do it for me because they start to realize we write by hand every single day. And most days we also do some sort of word processing. So they write little things, they write long things. We time to see how many words we can write in a minute, all of these things, and then we bump up to see how many words we can write in 2 minutes, and if it gets faster, and if they can you write for this many? I know my own kids who are in elementary school, at the youngest grades, they build stamina by saying, as a class, we can write for 2 minutes without needing ideas or needing help. Well, we are up to, and I know that they set goals as a class, like by the end of term, hopefully our class can write for 15 minutes quietly without stopping. So those are some kind of things that we want to build in. Stamina seems like a forgotten thing sometimes, I think. This is the point where I would ask all of you to remember back to when you were in writing or in English classes or even in elementary school. Do you remember sitting and writing for lengths of time? What kinds of things did you write about? All of those things matter. All right, Common Core state standards. Because I can't read the room here, I don't know the levels of familiarity with them that you all have, but I can honestly say that I have a ton of familiarity with them before they became official in Michigan, before we all had to use them. My district was already using them. We had already formed committees to unpack the standards and understand what they meant at each grade level for math and for English. And so I've been doing this for over a decade. And I can tell you that the Common Core State Standards have a range of writing standard all the way from 3rd grade until 12th grade. It's the very bottom standard, and it says something to the effect of writes routinely over extended time frames, so time for research, reflection, revision, all the different kinds of writing, and shorter time frames, so like a bell ringer activity or a quick write for a range of discipline-specific tasks. So if you're teaching argumentative writing, or even if you're doing it in social studies class and it's for social studies, purposes, audiences, all of those things, they want a range of writing. That is a standard. And like I said on here, 3rd through 12th grade have that as an official standard, but stamina building and trying to help kids with the joy of writing starts already with pre-K, with writing their names, with forming letters, with drawing pictures and telling stories. All of those things are foundational skills that students need to love writing and to be able to do it for longer periods of time. All right, this is a sign that's been hanging in my classroom for 18 years now. Writing is a process, not a product. We teach strategies to students so that they can go through the writing process. And I'm sure, because all of you are young and hip, that you have gone through these writing processes yourself in your educational career. But we want to teach, I put some of the strategies that I thought of off the top of my head that I teach when we are in each phase. So when we're in the planning phase, when I'm teaching kids how to plan, we talk about goal setting. We talk about gathering information. That can look like brainstorming. That can look like research. That can look like turning and talking with friends. We talk about making notes and keeping records of sources. We talk about our time management. Those are all planning strategies that we want to teach students. In the drafting part of writing, I teach organization. I teach self-monitoring of their goals. Are they meeting their goals? Do they need to change their goals? What is going on with that? Reading over their notes and records, referring back. Do they need to go back to some of the planning things? Do they need to gather more information? What's going on with those things? In the revising stage, we talk about rehearsing and rereading. Do we need to reread something? Reading it out loud to somebody else often can help us catch our own mistakes. We talk about making modifications to things. Are you being redundant? Did you already talk about that? Do we need something new? The editing stage is proofreading, format checking, getting all those little dotting your I's and lowercase j's, crossing your T's, making sure everything is perfect. And then publication, which a lot of books leave out the publication stage. They just do planning, drafting, revising, editing. And that is kind of it's not even circular. It's more like a web. You go back to the different stages all the time. And then publication is its own thing at the end. You have to know when to stop. You have to know when to jump out of the web and say, all right, I'm going to add my flair if I need to put in any graphs or charts or images or whatever. Or I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to write the end at the end, or I'm going to take those things out and I'm going to make sure that it looks just how it needs to be, and I'm going to publish it, whatever that might look like. In an essay, sometimes that just means hitting turn in. I try not to do too many of those with my kids because that's boring. Okay, I do want to say before I get to this, so I'm going to go back a slide. All of these things that I've gone through now count as best practice. And what best practice really means is that all of these things that we've gone over, gone over, hopefully you're going over them too, maybe writing some of this down, I don't know. It's all research supported. These are all things that if we go back to our very first slide, the wisdom of professional writers. Yes, these are things that writers say they do. Successful professional writers say that they do. They do the stages. They learn the strategies. These are things they do. The wisdom of teachers. Yes, these are all things that teachers have said in testimonial that they have done that works. And then also, when looked at scientifically and quantitatively, these are the validated practices that have evidence that support that they work. So one of the things that I'm going to, one of the reasons why I like you guys to read and do the article of the week and talk about them and then respond to each other's article is because that's where our research is, in those academic journals. And if we want to keep up and we want to be able to be in our 18th year of teaching and still be relevant and still be doing a good job, we need to keep up with what's the latest research. What do the people who are working in the field say works best with students? Your reading for this week is a little depressing at the beginning. I'm not going to lie. You're reading the first chapter in the writing thief for this week, and it starts out with some pretty dismal statistics. But I think, and I asked some questions in the response for that, for you guys to think about that, because I wonder why some of those things are as they are. So you're going to want to read that over and kind of think about what I've talked about today in this lecture, if you will, and think about that for your response. Also, another one of your assignments coming up is called, you might see it in the Dropbox, and it's on the assignment sheets, the literacy narrative. This is going to be your midterm, so it's not due until in October. However, this is one of those things where we're going to go through the different stages of the writing process the same way that you would go through it with your own students, so that you can feel what it feels like to go through it. That way you'll be able to model it with your own students. So here I have your literacy journey. This is how we're going to start. Best practice theory holds that you cannot teach what you cannot do. So a lot of, I remember in my first years of teaching, I had to teach grammar, and I had to teach grammar like prescriptively. Like we had a separate grammar book that was like, this is a noun, this is a verb. And I was fine with that when I was teaching 9th graders. I was totally fine with teaching the parts of speech. But then we got to things like having to diagram sentences. I've never diagrammed a sentence. I couldn't teach it because I didn't know how to do it. Although I did try to teach something I didn't know how to do, and it didn't go over well. Thankfully, we don't teach them to do that anymore but you can't teach what you can't do. And so we need to practice. So those who teach writing need to be writers. You need to write. Look at, I even have my tattoo that says write, because that is what we need to do. So over the course of the next few weeks, you all, and I'm going to do it with you because that's what a good writing teacher does. They model alongside. We're going to practice some of our best practice strategies that we're going to study in order to write a piece of our own literacy narrative. So to begin the writing process, we have to plan. So we're going to start with that little plan section. This week, I want you to create a list in your writer's notebook of possible experiences with learning to read and write that you could maybe write about. So I'm going to be doing this with you. So this is mine, and I took a picture of it, and I'll put it on here in a second. But I went ahead and did this just before recording today, and I filled up a page, and I'll show you what I did here. Oh, first of all, before I show you that, this is one thing that I do with my students. This is straight out of my slideshow for my own 8th graders. I do something called Writing Territories. That comes from Nancy Atwell, her book In the Middle. She wrote it a bazillion years ago, and it is still a fabulous resource. Keep in mind, if you do read it, Nancy Atwell started her own school and could do whatever she wanted. She had a very small number of students, and it can be interesting sometimes to read her work and be like, how did she do that? I could never do that with 150 students. Yeah, well, she didn't have 150 students. So you have to go in with the idea that you're going to adapt it for your own needs. But one thing I love that she did was something called Writing Territories, where the students in the very front of their notebook, the first page in their notebook, they had a thing that said Writing Territories. And what I do with my students is I put one of these up on the screen at a time. They have like a zoom in thing. And so I tell them, I put, what do I know a lot about? And I give them 30 seconds. I say, and for each of them, we can take less and less time, but I give them 30 seconds to silently, no writing, silently think, what do I know a lot about? And after that 30 seconds, I say, all right, everybody ready? And then I set a little clock for 1 minute. And I say, list as many things as you can that you know a lot about for 1 minute. And they write and they write and they write and they write and they write, and ding, the 1 minute is up. And I say, okay, turn to the person next to you and tell them 3 things that you wrote down. So they have to turn to the person next to them and they each share 3 things. Okay, now I'm going to take 3 volunteers, 3 hands, to share 1 thing you wrote down. So we hear about 3 things that people wrote down. And then I say, all right, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. All right, so then we go on. I say, okay, and I put up the next one. What have I experienced? What things have I gone through in my life? 30 seconds to think about that question or to ask me a question, a clarifying question about that. All right, that 30 seconds is up. I give them 1 minute to list as many things as they can think of that they've experienced. And we continue to do that until they have a whole page. Some people are like, Miss, I don't have any more room. What do I do? Turn the page. Start on the back. So they end up with this whole, like, some kids end up with 2, 3 pages at the front of their writing notebook with all of these things. And I tell them, as we go through the school year, you're going to sit and stare at me, and I'm going to say, what can I do to help you get started? And they're going to say, I don't know what to write about. And I'm going to say, open it up to your writing territories. Which things in your writing territories would make sense for this writing assignment? And they can kind of go through and star things and cross things out. And I tell them, it's fluid. You can cross things out. You can add things. You can add sub things. You can turn the page and organize things the way you want to. It's yours. Your writing notebook is yours. So that is how we kind of generate a ton of ideas for writing assignments we haven't even had yet. And for some kids, it gets them super excited to write about stuff because they've come up with all these ideas. So anyway, that is one way that you could do that. And I do it with them. So during that 1 minute of writing, I am writing stuff down. And so we do that together, and then we can all together look at our writing territories. So this right here is my page of thinking for this week's assignment that I just told you about. Create a list in your writer's notebook of memories you have of your reading and writing journey, and try to fill a page. And I have lots of things. I have Book It. I don't know if any of you even remember what Book It was, but it was if you read, every time you read another book, your teacher gave you a star, and you put it on this Book It pin, and every time you got another star, or every time you hit a goal or whatever, you got a certificate for a free personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. It was fabulous for people like me who love to read. It was not so fabulous for kids who did not love to read. But that's a separate course. Teaching reading is a separate course. But we're talking about literacy, and reading and writing go together. In kindergarten, I remember all the way back from kindergarten doing letter people. You probably do not know what letter people are, but they were great. They were long before Zoophonics. Being in the hamburger reading group, they leveled the groups. And I remember in first grade, we had the hamburgers. They were the advanced readers. The fries were the middle of the road readers. And then you had the milkshakes. And everybody knew in class, if you were in the milkshake group, you were basically illiterate, even though we didn't know what that word meant. So again, not best practice. It is not best practice to do that these days. But that's what they did when I was learning. And like I said, I was lucky because I was a good reader. I was a strong reader, strong writer. So those tracking things that we know now are detrimental didn't affect me the way that they would affect struggling readers, or as we like to say, emerging readers. And then I just listed things all the way from 4th grade. I had to write about the Gamble quail. 5th grade things when we could write in real books. We had this young authors program, and they gave you a blank book and you could write in it and you could illustrate. And that was the first time I remember loving to write, because I wrote a story called Terry the Turkling, and it was fabulous, by the way. If I could find, you know what? I know I still have it somewhere, and so I'm going to try to find it and share with you all. My secondary reading and writing, I can't remember a ton of specific things I wrote, and then all of a sudden I remembered all this stuff. So, like, I remember in high school when we would have to do research, we did not have the internet at all. That wasn't a thing. So I had to go to the library, which was still called the library, not a media center. It was a library because all it was books. And I had to go into the card catalog to find books that I wanted. There was no browsing on any sort of software program. There weren't any computers. There were no computers in my library, but they did have these giant machines called microfiche readers, and microfiche were these little, like, this is what they did. So instead of, like, now you can go and click on links and get text of things, well, in order to save tons and tons of, like, newspapers and journals and those kind of things, we didn't have databases, we had microfiche. So you went and I feel like you had to go to the librarian and say, I need microfiche that have to do with sea turtles. And she'd say, all right. And she'd go back and she'd find the articles for you, and she'd give you this, like, thing that was like this big. It looked like a slide. Do you guys remember what slideshows are? Like, not Google slideshows, but like those legit little slides. And so you'd put it under this giant machine, and the machine worked as, like, sort of like a magnifier, and it would magnify what was on this little thing. And then you had to take notes because you couldn't write on it because it was a tiny little thing. So then you had to take all your notes. It was awful. So I love the internet now. Anyway, these are all the things. I remember that writing across the curriculum became a thing when I was in high school. I'm dating myself here, but that was the first thing. And I remember the teachers grumbling about it because in US history, they were like, oh, we have to do an essay in every class now. And that was it. It wasn't like fun writing across the curriculum. It was like, well, everybody has to assign a paper. So in US history, I wrote about Elvis and the birth of rock and roll. In physics class, I wrote about optics. And honestly, my parents had bought a set of encyclopedias. Again, do you guys know what that is? It's like Wikipedia, but on paper and stuff. And I remember basically copying right out of there. I basically was a copy and paster before copy and paste was a thing. And, what were the teachers going to do? They couldn't, like, search it up. They couldn't put it in some sort of plagiarism, finder thing. So I had hits and misses with my writing. So anyway, this is what I did so that I could, and this is what I want you all to do. I want you to fill up a page with things you remember about writing. All right, so to review this week's assignments, let me move my face out of your way. This week's assignments, number 1, whoever is going to be brave and take our first article of the week, that is due on Wednesday, by Wednesday night. Who's going to be my brave souls? Maybe if we were in class, I'd give you candy. Who's it going to be? Those will be due September 9. And once those are up, then you all can start responding to them. This week, actually tomorrow, I'll be taking your interview questions that you wrote up for Mrs. Tanya Harbottle, who's in Chicago Public Schools, and I'll be interviewing her tomorrow. And then this week, I need you to submit 3 to 4 questions for Dr. Jennifer Slanger. So that is also under Module 1 in e-learning, the Google form for that, and her bio is in there. Read chapter 1 from The Writing Thief, and then submit reading response number 2. Reading response number 2 is also in module number 1 below this video, I think. And then make sure that you get your ideas down in your notebook for your literacy journey narrative. ideas for you to draw from. It'll be so exciting. So as usual, please send me an email. I know that there were problems with some of the Google links this week. Hopefully we got that taken care of. If you are still not able to get into the Google links, please email me. I have a link to the WMU thing for Google. And then if that doesn't work, I can email you the direct link to the slideshows and forms and whatever that you need. And then that seems to be working. I haven't had anyone who just absolutely couldn't access it after those little works. So please shoot me an email if you need help. Also, if you have any questions, I have set up all of our guest speakers. By the way, I put a revised schedule in the course information because I added one more guest speaker. All of our guest speakers range from first grade through fifth, I think. So I'm your middle school person. So if you have questions about middle school, I'll probably take a week to be the guest speaker and answer questions. But please, if you have questions as we're going along or about things that I'm showing you that I've done with my middle schoolers, please ask. I'm more than happy to either shoot you an email back, or if I think it would benefit the whole class, I will include it in my weekly video here. So have fun with the work this week. Shoot me an email if you have questions, and I will see you around the e-learning.